Recording. Welcome back to Fighters Drinking Coffee. Today we have AndyGames here from the Behind the Camera with AndyGames podcast. He is he had done boxing over in the UK circuit and is also a podcaster and I believe also game streamer. Is that correct, Andy?
Yeah, well, technically a former game streamer, but it's still definitely a part of who I am online anyway. That's why I keep the AndyGames name there, because I think I kind of credit that for getting like my start in podcasting. So it was definitely a big part of it.
That's really cool. How about we start off with your career in boxing, and we'll kind of get started there. What what kind of led you into that? Some of the different aspects of boxing, especially. I mean, a lot of our listeners are here in the U.S. We have a few over in the U.K., but a lot of our listeners are over here in the U.S. So the difference might be, how the circuit is going, and kind of the amateur, and you went all the way up to semi-professional, if I remember correctly. So how that circuit differs from the one over here, I think would be very interesting to hear. So let's start off there, and then we can kind of continue on.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, first of all, I'd just like to thank you guys for having me on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've been looking forward to talking about this. This is not something that I've kind of revisited in quite a long time, so I'm excited to talk to you guys about it. So just to go back to the beginning, it was 2017, and I was just out of a bad relationship. I was horribly out of shape. I hadn't really done any form of exercise for a good number of years at this point, and I was at a point where I kind of felt like I had like a bit of a new lease of life. So I was like, right, okay, I need to do something here that looked like it could be interesting, that I need to get back into shape with, something that I can like really discipline myself with. And I was just like sitting in work one day, and I just had this little bit of a light bulb moment where I remembered a friend of mine some months before had competed in a charity boxing match, and I was like, I'm gonna have a look at this and see if there's anything upcoming like in my local area. So I just simply Googled it, and it came up, and this was around February time, early February 2017, and there was an event to be starting training in the May for the event to happen in the July. So I was like, okay, let's give this a go. I didn't have any experience in combat sports at a competitive level as such. Now, albeit this was white collar, like charity, so it was like for people who don't have that kind of experience. But I was like, I've always kind of been a fan of actually doing a bit of training, like through my dad. He had like a little bit of a background when he was younger in terms of training. And so like the kind of mindset's always been there. Like the most experience I'd had at this point was I trained in jiu-jitsu for about 4 years before, from when I was like 14 till 18. But that was like a weekly thing just to sort of stay active, and not something that I ever chose to do, but I was more encouraged into it by my parents. So the boxing was like an entirely like different thing. So I got into the best shape of my life within that 3-4 months that I spent just training from there. Like and I don't know if this was an age thing, but because I definitely couldn't do it now, but I started out running 5K 3 times a week, and I was just so unfit. At the time, I was like the worst shape I'd ever been in. And I just started running 5K 3 times a week and started doing some basic light boxing work and sit-ups and stuff like that, some sort of strength and conditioning kind of things. And I was like, started to go quite well. And then I started my for the training camp for the event in the May, and like I still wasn't in any fantastic shape, but I was kind of ready to start a bit more ahead of the curve than what I was, and it just became an addiction at this point, whether it was to do with just the adrenaline or the fact it was something different, or the fact that I just wasn't bad at it. It was just something I was like, wow, this is something I feel like I could keep on doing for a long, long time. And so then we get to the first the event, my first ever fight, white collar. So you're talking the headgear, 16-ounce gloves, which looking back is like so much heavier than what you really realize. Like I genuinely, whenever I went down in the gloves and went back up, I was like, oh my god, like no, this is just like having it's just like having two sets of bricks on your hands. Like, oh my god, like it's safer when when you take a hit from them. But um, so I did that, won my first fight, fight by decision, and I was just like, wow. So then I signed up for the next event just because I was like, yeah, this is awesome. Like I'd learned like a really good sense of discipline from doing this, and I got closer to my trainer at the time, my coach. He became like a good friend, and as a starting point, it was just like a real good sign of things to come.
Yeah, man. There's definitely like people that are more attuned to competing like that. There's people that do it and they're done after the first time, but then people like yourself, and I mean, we were this way too. You do that first competition, you might not think that that's going to be the route forever, but you try it, and then you're just addicted to it. It's an outlet or a feeling that some people need or crave, and so they continue to chase after that. Where'd you go
Yeah.
after that first fight? What was it like after that? How many more, I guess, how many total fights did you have, and kind of walk us through kind of that journey.
Yeah, no problem. But yeah, of course, like what you're saying is like 100%. Like there's so many people who were part of this like first training camp who were just like, do you know, I just want to be able to say I've done it. I'm proud of myself for doing it. I've got into good shape, and it was a one and done for them. Um, Probably just as many people would have said the opposite as well. Like myself would have just been like, nah, this is the first of many for me. So this was the July of 2017, and then there was the next event that they had in my city was in November of the same year. So they did events all across the UK, and they'd only recently started doing them in Northern Ireland. So I was like maybe within the first 5 events or something like that in Northern Ireland, and um, so I had like a couple of months off of training, and I let myself go again, but not like to that sort of point again, like to the point where I was kind of a little bit more conditioned that it was like easier to get back into shape. So I went in for my second fight. It was a good training program, same idea as what I was doing before, and I got put in with a more difficult opponent this time, and I look back and there's so much about that fight that I actually don't remember. Like I know I got absolutely ran through in the first round, and I was like, right, okay, like got my bell rung and everything. It was like I was kind of like, right, I need to kind of like gear up here because I do not want to lose. Like for me, whenever I was like going into these fights, like losing just wasn't an option for me, and I couldn't tell you why. Like I couldn't tell you why. Maybe it's just my level of competitiveness that I have as a person, but for me, it wasn't an option. So ended up coming back and winning on a split decision, which was nice. So and after that, I just like I took a year off it, like or just under a year off it. I We were into 2018, and I was like, okay. I sort of helped my coach with a little bit behind the scenes of some of the events that he was doing, and it was like, yeah, okay, I kind of like this side of it. But then, obviously, with that still being around it, like you get itchy knuckles, you just get itchy knuckles. And I was like, right, okay, I'll sign up for. There's the same event a year later, and this was my third fight. So I signed up, and it was November 2018. I again did the same. Um, same training program, same coach and everything. So like that aspect of familiarity for me and the fact that I was friends with my coach, massive, massive help for me. And he was the one who really kind of encouraged me to come back and fight again. And he always had like a somewhat of a soft spot for me because I before my first fight, I was like working a 9 to 5 and we didn't train. We trained like 3 times a week. Well, he it was technically it was 2 times a week, but he put on extra sessions. So I ended up it was like 4 or 5 days a week. I was actually there training, and I was working 5 days a week as well. So like I would have finished in work. I would have went on the treadmill and work, in the gym and work after hours for about an hour. Then I would have went over to the boxing gym to do some extra training, and then I would have like finished up after the session. So I was really kind of training for 3.5 hours after work, 4 or 5 times a week. And like I look back, I was like, there's no way in hell I could do that again. Like if I tried to even run the length of myself, I would just feel like I'm ready to have a fucking heart attack, you know? Like it's yeah, so I had the 3 fights, and I went into the third fight very much kind of not in the best shape of my life, but again, like the conditioning is like a huge, huge part of this. Um, I I kind of felt comfortable going for the 3 rounds, even if I was like kind of playing it safely. Because like whenever you're doing combat sports, whenever you're competing in like a fight, you sometimes have to change up your game plan, whether it be based surrounded by the person you're fighting, or whether it's just a case of you thought you had more in the tank than you actually do. And that was the case with this third fight that I had. And I watched the fight back recently actually, and it was let's just say it didn't look as glamorous or as technique filled as how I thought it went in first person competing at the time. It was just two overweight guys slugging away at each other. That's really the best way I can describe it. And it was, I mean, again, came away with the win fairly comfortably, which again was nice. But something that I quite liked about this particular fight, my third fight, was the guy that I faced. He ended up with this vendetta against me, very much a friendly rivalry. He was determined to get me back. He was determined to take back a victory from me because we were both very like evenly sized, somewhat evenly skilled, but he just couldn't take the loss. And again, totally fair. Totally fair. So that then took us into 2019. And so I had 3 white collar fights under my belt at this point, all wins. And about maybe a few months into 2019, my coach said to me, he's like, so I'm leaving this current company that we're fighting under, and I'm basically moving along to another one, but it also offers semi-professional. Would you be keen to do this? And I was like, right, I'm going to need to think about this because for me, it was a huge, huge step up. Like, and it wasn't something that I was majorly comfortable with at the time. I don't know why, like either. I just was a bit like, okay, this seems a little bit sort of, I don't know. I feel like I'm out of my depth here. Like maybe call it imposter syndrome or something. Like I'm not sure at all. So um so we're in 2019 at this point, and again my weight, my fitness levels, it's just yo-yoing constantly because like I was only going in seasons. That's where I was like training. It was just a seasonal thing, which isn't the best way to do it because it needs to be a lifestyle. And I kind of didn't really take that on as well as I should. So like the discipline was there for while I was training, but when I was not training, it was, oh my God, it just sort of became it became a mess. So we get to that point, and my coach is like, okay, do you want to come and be a runner at one of the events and you can see the semi-professional unfold in front of you. And I was like, all right, let's do that. So took this paid job for a night, and it was 50 quid he gave me. It wasn't too bad. And I was kind of like making sure all the fighters needed to be where they were at any given point. But then I got to watch like maybe a round or two of each of the fights, and it was good. So, and I think at that point I kind of realized what the problem that I was having with the semi-professional was, and that was I thought I was out of my depth with it, but I seen the quality of the quality of some of the fights, and I was like, yeah, I could do that. I was like, yeah, the quality didn't necessarily match the level that it actually was. So I was like, okay, let's let's give this a go. So again, kind of rinse and repeat the cycle here at this point, except this time the event I signed up for was like a hybrid between white collar and semi professional. Now, I will caveat this by saying it was unlicensed semi professional, so it wasn't the same in an instance where you pay for your professional license, where you sort of pay a fixed figure over X number of years, helped by sponsorships. This was just kind of an at your own risk sort of thing. But like, it, we were allowed to do it. It wasn't illegal kind of thing, but that's kind of the nature of what the semi-professional was. And but the difference with this was this actually had titles. So my first ever semi-professional fight, I was fighting for a vacant heavyweight title, which was like exciting. And it was against my previous opponent from my last white collar fight. The same guy was fighting for the title, and he was like, I had never seen this guy train the way he did. It was next level, and I was but I just kind of looked at him and was like, nah, I've got him. Like I've got him, and we get into that fight, and I don't I, I don't know what it was, but I think that there was maybe something about what was at stake versus the fact that I felt a bit freer. I didn't have the headgear, I had the smaller gloves. I felt a bit freer. And it just 3 rounds, I just felt as calm as ever, didn't gas out, didn't get tired, and I ended up coming home with the belt. And I was at the time, man, it was like that I felt on top of the world at that point. Like I had this belt. I was like, oh my God, like I've like won a championship here. Like whether or not it's like recognized on any bigger scale, that didn't matter. Like it was for this division of this company, this was the title, and I'd won it. And I was like, wow, this is like, man, I was kind of like speechless at the time. And I actually still have the belt as well. I still have the belt, which is pretty cool.
Did it make you give that back? So did you end up leaving with that belt? Did you have any other fights after that, or was that kind of the end of the boxing career for you?
So I ended up having 2 more fights after that. Um, so the next one was that following October in 2019. But this was the sort of thing where, the difference between competing in the semi-professional division was that not only was I competing really in around Ireland, it also meant going overseas to the rest of the UK. And they wanted to kind of really integrate everything so that it was like, a proper division, a proper league sort of rankings and everything like that. So I was what they called the Celtic heavyweight champion. And my next fight after that was I went over to England with my team, and I was fighting in a title eliminator for what they called the Four Nations belt. And what that was England, Northern Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. So like this massive, it was a huge event. I think there was maybe about 40 to 45 fights on this one card. And like it was honestly probably a bit too big, but it was an incredible event. And I think I pulled out my best performance that night. I was against so some fella from I think he might have been from Darlington in England, which is like the Midlands of England, mid north or something of England, I think. And but like I was so nervous going into this fight because the timing of this probably couldn't have been any worse at the time because I was on holiday the week before, and like I had this booked right before I knew I was going to be fighting in England for my biggest fight yet. Um, but like I stayed fit the entire time because I knew it was one of those things where I could get called to go for a fight at any point, any place. So it was like, okay, this is like enough motivation for me to stay fit. So, but I had a holiday booked with my girlfriend at the time, and my coach was like, right. I'm assuming you can't cancel it, so you're definitely not, but make sure you do not have one single drink on this holiday. And I was like, okay, fine, fine, fine. I get you. And of course, I did because it was on holiday and it was just like, well, I mean, it's there, it's free, why not? But I kind of made good use of it because we were on a cruise and I still didn't have any details of my opponent yet because it kept changing. I think it was because I was that awkward heavyweight kind of size. And so I made use of the fitness facilities on this cruise ship and doing like maybe 20,000 steps a day, running 3 miles every day, and it was just like, okay, I'm still fit, so I'm kind of thinking I can drink as much as I want here and I should be okay. That was the theory. That was the theory. So, and then I get the message from my coach halfway through. It's like, okay, here's the details of your opponent. He is 97 kg, which is a very light for a heavyweight in boxing. I think it's 94 kg or 92 kg. I'm not too sure. I can't really remember what the lower limit is. And I was about 105 kg at this point, which in pounds is about 230, something like that. So I was like kind of well into the heavyweight scale. And my opponent, the way my the way my coach described it to me was my opponent was he was going to be big but very lean, like bordering on the point that he could have been an upper level cruiserweight, but he just kind of was in heavy. And I was like, right, okay. So the I knew I kind of had to be on top. I had to be like on top of my game. I had to bring the best I could possibly. So then I'm backstage, getting ready for the fight, doing some pad work, training, just getting ready, and I couldn't say a single word because I was that nervous. And then one of the fellas in my team who was kind of like assistant coach as well, he goes to me, he's like, I've never seen you nervous before. What is going on? And then and I think I think like the whole thing of that was because I hadn't even seen my opponent at this point, right? So I'm just like, okay. So we come out and so we kind of came out corner by corner. So he came out first, but we sort of ended up meeting right behind the curtain right before going out. Um, and I see my opponent right in front of me, and I'm kind of like, okay. And I kind of looked and I knew, and obviously it's not good to sort of look at your opponent and think, yeah, I've got this guy or not. But it was one of those things where I looked at this guy and I was like, this guy should be a middleweight. He should be a middleweight, but I'm not gonna judge this guy's ability because I've never seen him throw a punch. Like he could come in here, he could put me on my ass in 2 seconds. That's always the sort of risk you take when you get into the ring. So we get in and I'm sizing him up, and this guy's shorter than me. Like I'm 6 feet tall. This guy was probably about 5'8", 5'9", something like that. And we're sizing each other up, and I go in for a couple of jabs and a right hand, and they don't seem to connect. And he ends up hitting me on the top of the head with a left hook, and I was like, okay, that was on me. Okay, thankfully didn't connect fully, but it was a warning sign nonetheless. And my coach, oh my god, my coach! All I remember is hearing my coach shouting from the corner, "God damn you, fucking idiot!" And I was like, "Oh man, please, please don't be doing this right now. I need to focus. I don't need you. I don't need you putting me off here." So, but thankfully, once we kind of like figured figured everything out. Like unfortunately for my opponent at the time, like yeah, didn't have the cardio. I think he kind of came in unprepared. Is probably the best way to describe it. And like no harm to him, but I just kind of got my focus in, got my combinations, and couple of shots that I hit him with it. He just threw his head back, and it was just he was on the retreat. And so yeah, that was so I ended up coming away with the victory there. So like after that point, I was basically the number one contender for, or one of the number one contenders for the vacant heavyweight Four Nations title for the whole UK. Um, so that was my last fight of 2019. I did have another fight after that, but it was just I was filling in for a white collar, just as a favor to my coach. And that was fun. It was nice to go back to that sort of thing, but it wasn't for me really. I wanted to do more with the semi-professional, but unfortunately, coming into 2020, COVID had its way with that, and that's what kind of put an end to like the fighting side of things, which is a big shame because had COVID not happened, I probably still would be doing this today.
Well, Andy, you got a hell of a run. Is what it sounds like to me.
Sorry, I can't hear you at all, man.
Okay, my bad. I said you had one hell of a run. It sounds like to me.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, like I certainly learned a lot about like myself and discipline from it because it was it was just something else, and I kind of learned a lot through my coach because there were times I thought he was the biggest fucking asshole in the world, but like he knew what I was capable of and just wanted me to really live up to the potential. And like he's seen a lot in me, he's seen a lot in all of the guys, and he was hard on everybody, but you know, he was always there for everyone too. Like so he was very, very good in that way. Um but I think even right now, like I don't know if I could really go back because he doesn't even coach anymore. Like he went on to become a professional rap and cut person. So now he goes all over the world doing as like a cornerman, like in like the Vaseline, wrapping the hands and the cut management and stuff. Like really, really, really find his feet with doing that, and he's absolute credit to him for getting into that.
Well, yeah, and that's part of his job, right? Is to kind of be a pain in your ass to push you to your limits.
Yeah,
It
oh,
sounds like
100%.
it worked too, because to have four boxing fights, if I heard you correctly, undefeated, and you ended as a champion. That's a credit to him, and it gave you an opportunity to test your limits.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like as I was saying about going into the semi-professional, like I that was that was a prime example of me testing my limits because I never ever saw myself doing that. Like there was, I think right from the very start, I only ever seen it as like a one and done type thing. But after that, I was like, he kind of got the bug for it. And like going into 2020, um, started training for what would have been my first title defense. In January, started training for that for an event happening in March. But we obviously all know what happened in March 2020. So I was training for that, but like I'm actually kind of like that. It turned into a blessing in disguise there because I was doing so much training and I was a bit older at this point. And I think like a lot of it had taken its toll on my body at this point. Now, like bear in mind, I was only 26 at this point, so I was only 3 years older. But like I feel like I'd done a lot, put my body through a lot in such a short period of time, having gone from doing nothing. So I was like, again, I was out of shape. Wasn't the worst I've ever been, but I was still out of shape, and I decided to get into weightlifting through a local gym, doing like a 6 week program there. And then I was also training for this fight as well. So I was training an hour in the morning and 2 hours at night for 5 days a week. And again, it was manageable to a degree, but I feel like had I went into this fight March 2020, I don't know how it would have been. And the guy I was supposed to be fighting, like I knew the guy, I was friends with the guy, he would have been part of our team, but because like him and I were fighting, he he sort of went and trained off on his own to his own accord. So this guy, he's a fair bit younger than me. Like I think he would probably be God, he'd probably be only be in his mid 20s now, I think. Um but he had been in the amateurs since he was about no age, like about 8 or 9 years old. He had been in the amateurs. And he'd had hundreds and hundreds of fights. Just because in the amateur circuit, that was like, you could have ended up having a fight every single week. And he'd like, been a multiple time champion in different age groups, different weight classes. And yeah, he was probably one of the most conditioned people I've ever been in a ring with. He Now, this guy was trying to think this guy was about 280 pounds, 285 pounds, and about 5'8". That they are two measurements that should not go together. This guy, this guy could not run the length of himself, but he could spar for a dozen rounds, maybe more, and not get tired. And that's kind of where I learned the whole importance of conditioning. Like this guy's been doing this for years. It didn't matter how unfit he got, he was still able to throw hands, like no matter what. And it's a shame that fight never happened in the end because it would have been good. I still look forward to it. I still like sort of not look forward. I still look back and think that could have been a good fight because I had more power, but this kid had and precision, speed and precision versus power, and it could have been a good fight. It's one of those ones that even like a lot of people in our team kind of do look back and think, I wonder what would have happened, how that would have went down. So the COVID kind of had its say in that. Then it was about 18 months later to late 2021. Again, getting ready for another event, but just because we were at that sort of really difficult point coming out of COVID where everything was like still restricted, but people were still unsure. We had an event all ready to go, and about 3 weeks out, it ended up getting cancelled. And at that point, it was like, everybody ended up just going like their own different ways, doing their own different thing after that. And it was really sad to see it go and like have like what was a huge part of my life just kind of stop. And it wasn't really as simple to just join like a gym because there was no kind of like gyms around where I could have just went to just do some training. Everything was all you would join as a member with the purpose of having a fight or boxercise, which is exactly the opposite of what I wanted to do. So that kind of brought us to like that point where it was like, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to find something else again. But like again, it's one of those things. Like I will always look back and think, man, I feel like I achieved a lot in such a short period of time doing that. And like, even though it was only 4 years on and off, it felt like such a defining moment kind of thing, I think, in my life, especially in my 20s.
Yeah, you were a fighter. Like you get to say that. It's a defining thing for you.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like, and like, I know I mentioned before that it felt like losing wasn't an option for me, but like, again, I think that just kind of adds to it because like, I just wanted the victory. Even though getting in the ring was an achievement in itself, I feel like I just wanted something to show for it in the end. And I feel like I did. And the only regret I have with it is not being able to defend my belt once. So I ended up getting to keep it, and I still have it to this day. But I yeah, I kind of have been left wondering what could have been, especially having no defenses. But I guess like the other side of that, I retired undefeated, so that's another kind of another positive.
That's very positive. And by the way, I have this like fantasy of going to Ireland or the UK and hanging out in an underground boxing fight. If I come visit, is that something we can do?
No, I don't know how. Well, so the thing is, I don't know if they exist, but then if that's probably the heart of their charm, that's because that's why they're underground. But I feel like it's something that could happen, 100%, 100%. I mean, I have the connections to find out, so there's
Dude,
always
you're
a
the man. Let's make it happen.
Absolutely, man.
I like that. There was something that you talked about when you were I think it was talking about that first title fight. So you'd already beaten the guy, and that kind of mentality, that confidence that you were having going into that is something that when we talk to a lot of fighters, it's a very common theme. Um, like you have to have that. But that mentality, what do you think that there was a change in? I mean, you said you got into this coming off of a breakup, like all of these things. Um, do you think that that changed getting into boxing, getting into fighting, that you kind of like rediscovered that confidence, or do you think that was something that was already there going into the sport?
I think it was probably the former. I think it was something that I kind of rediscovered because for a start, I was stepping out of my comfort zone. Like this was like unlike anything I'd ever done before. Now, like I said, like I mentioned at the start, like I did have a few years of jiu-jitsu experience, but like the difference of that was just like a sort of community center once a week type thing run by run by someone's dad kind of thing, you know. And that's not to discredit them because obviously they all of the staff there worked incredibly hard to get where they were, but there was no sort of there was no view for competitive action with that, whereas what I was doing was with a view to compete. So it was like it was already different in that. Like I could have done that. Well, I could have done that once a week, jiu-jitsu. I could have done that once a week for ever. We'd still be doing it now, some 17 years later, and you know that would be great. But I probably wouldn't really have as much to sort of show for it than what I did in my short tenure boxing. But um, yeah, it was like totally out of my comfort zone. Everybody I ever told, they were like, "Oh my god, that's like so different." Like they were like, "That's really cool," you know. And um, I think people were shocked at the fact that it was something I was doing that nobody ever really knew or would have associated me with. Um, but like it definitely brought out a level of confidence that I never would have thought I'd had like previously.
That's awesome, man. And then after you were done boxing, where what did you do next? Was that what led into like the gaming realm and all of that, or is that something you were doing prior, or do you think maybe the confidence you gained from boxing opened up the door to try something new like gaming, podcasting, all of that?
I think in a sense, yeah. I think in a sense, because now there was like about another 18-month gap between the two things, but I see between the end of 2021 and middle of 2023, I didn't really do anything. I trained a lot. I went to the gym a lot. I got really into weightlifting, and that was really awesome. But I, it didn't really kind of do much for my confidence in some ways because it was just something I did. It was something I enjoyed doing. It was just something that was incredibly personal for me. Like I wasn't training for confidence reasons. I was because I didn't really have any positions that I needed to be um outwardly confident in, like you know, with the boxing and even podcasting what I do now. When it came to the streaming, that was I mean I guess I could say it was there and it carried it into it, but because like, when you look at it like that, if you're in front of a group of people who are watching you and you're the only person who has to use their voice, um and you know the audience, all they can do is really react. It's the same thing when you're like behind a microphone on camera doing things in one take. there is a sort of bit of a crossover, a similarity between the two. And I think to do any of these things, it does require an element of confidence, whether, you're just naturally confident or you've done something prior in front of people, performed in front of people in a one take manner that you can kind of carry into doing these things. But like I think the discipline is probably the more important thing out of it, because the confidence, the discipline, it sort of it gives you more purpose and drive, I think, to kind of do it right, which is also very important.
I think the confidence comes from the discipline. That's my personal take.
Mm-hmm. No, I would agree, 100%.
Yeah. I guess while we're kind of closing up here, how about you walk us through your podcast, kind of what brought you to do podcasting, the idea behind it, and some more in depth about your show. Go ahead and plug your stuff. Talk about yourself.
Of course, thank you. I started streaming under AndyGames _94 back in July 2023, and it was one of those things. I kind of took that confidence into doing that, and I think I did it for about a year, and I kind of wanted a bit of a niche, and like I'd already done like a podcast with a buddy of mine I met through streaming, and I was like, he went on to do other things, so I was like, okay, I've got the bug for this. I want to kind of do it, and the whole thing with streaming is there's somewhat of an unspoken competitive element to it. Now, nobody's actively really competing with anybody, but there's more just that sort of thought that you might be competing with, because you want to retain viewership. You want people to keep coming back to your streams. So I decided to do the podcast. And the way it started was I started interviewing other Twitch streamers who I knew, who there was like a lot of mutual viewers and mutual audience. I started interviewing them just about them and their lives and how they got into streaming, just like more of their background, things that their viewers who spent all this like time watching them might not have known. And in that sort of space, like I did about my first like 20 to 25 episodes were pretty much all streamer based, and like I think kind of people loved it because I used to do it live, and it helped me really kind of initially find my voice in terms of the sort of interviewer I wanted to be. But like more importantly for me, it was something that I knew had a lot more longevity, and I just was like, wow, this is incredible. So I took that. I then started to branch out. So I took it all off Twitch. I did it all remotely offline, and started branching out into other people within creative arts, or just any people with a story really. And like the whole basis for me was to go back years into my teens. Like I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine, and then it was like we were out in town one day, just people watching, and it was like, I wonder what that person's story is. Like I wonder what this person's story is. But the thing is, we're probably never gonna know, because and like that's kind of what I kind of wanted to do with the podcast, was to like give people a platform to share their story, whether they felt like they might not have had that or had never been given the chance to, sort of thing. So, and as of this, as we're speaking now, we are 56 episodes in, wide variety of guests, and honestly, I wouldn't change a single thing about it. And releases every Sunday at 3 p.m. UK time, which is 10 a.m. Eastern, and it's only going to keep on going.
Yeah, man. That's really cool. Do you have? We have a deadline on our end, so I would actually love to keep talking to you. You have a super interesting story, but do you have anything else that you want to plug? Any social media? Where can people find you? How can they follow you?
Yeah, of course. So, you can find me on Instagram at Behind the Camera with AndyGames, on TikTok at Behind the Camera Podcast AG, and Twitter at Behind the Cam Pod. Guys, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been absolutely incredible chatting to you. I know it's been a lot of just me talking the entire time, so I appreciate you just kind of letting me have it out there. It really has meant a lot, and I really do appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. It was,
Thank you so
it's
much.
good to just have you telling the story. It's cool too that let you kind of relive that. You were saying you haven't really discussed it a whole lot, and it's kind of but seems like it was a really big part of your life. So we enjoyed being able to get that story out there. It's cool. It's always good to get these life experiences. What brings people into fighting? What they gained from it. That's a big part of what we look for, what we try to express to people through our show. So, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being here. We're glad to have you.
No.
And that was Fighters Drinking Coffee. It was a little later on your end. I assume you weren't having coffee, Andy, but we were drinking coffee on our side.
Oh, I had my coffee here still. It was all good.
You kept it with the theme. I like it.
I had to, sir.
But yeah, thank you guys. That was Fighters Drinking Coffee. We will drop all of that information for where you can find Andy and his podcast in the show notes. You can also find us at Fighters Drinking Coffee on Instagram. You can find Scott
at Scott Dance BJJ on Instagram,
and myself at Get Sudsy. We'll have any updates regarding us, the show. You'll be able to find some. We'll try to include some little tidbits from this show. See if we can't get some pictures of Andy with his championship belt on there. So I'll be coming to you for that, Andy. I'll look for that picture.
Sounds good.
And we'll have the Discord in the show notes. We have some cool stuff coming up. We'll go ahead and shout out Cruise Combat. We'll have a link in the description. You can go on their website. You can get buy some sweet made in America gear. Get yourself $5 off while you're there, and we should have something cool coming down the pipe with them too here in the near future. So we'll keep you guys updated on that. And as always, like, follow, subscribe, review. The reviews are big. Those get us up in the algorithm. That helps us helps other people find the show. And, get on there. Let people know what you think about it. Let them know how much you're enjoying listening to our voices and stories like Andy's. And, yeah, guys, thanks for listening. Bye.